Oh, you switched it. No, the old oopty loop. Okay, all right. Cody tried to put himself in the middle. Welcome back to the show, everybody. We are live. You will notice, for those of you that are watching live on YouTube, that we are minus one Jason Ackerman, which is part of the big news today. Mr. Bodie Ackerman, Jason's son, was born the other evening, so he is not with us. He is taking care of mom and baby. Everybody is good. And they named him Bodie because Jason is really hoping that he will look more like Patrick Swayze and less like him as he grows up. So, but back on the show, breaking news. Breaking news. Mr. Pat Barber, but he's been on the show many times, but we are going to announce here live for the first time that Pat is officially part of the Best Hour team. He's going to come on, helping us with affiliate development, coach development, the knowledge, which is a fucking rad idea that we're working on, all the things. He's with us in the trenches, doing all the stuff. So, dude, I'm pumped.
Pumped. So pumped.
Yes.
That was fantastic. I appreciate the clap.
Louder
Genuinely, though, like, I don't think you guys out there fully understand the item. Maybe you guys do listen to this often, but the stuff that these guys have going on the back end is amazing. And I'm getting to watch it and see it now. And I am truly blown away and honored to be a part of this team. So stoked.
I actually like that nobody really has any idea what we're doing. I prefer it that way. And it's fun. People will find out when they find out. And it doesn't matter, but it's, what is it? What is the term? Is it speak softly and carry a big stick? I don't know.
I like it.
I don't know.
I mean, yeah, sure.
Yeah. Spare the rod, spoil the child. I don't know. Just all sorts of.
That's a different saying. Yeah. Carries a different connotation, but yeah, sure, man.
Correct. Yeah. Why not? Parenting. Yeah. Oh, funny story. We're talking about parenting. My 4-year-old, as most of you know, is a complete maniac. He probably fit in very, very well with the Barber boys. Those photos you put, I commented in Pat's. I was like, these children seem unsafe, and I like it.
Yeah, that's my boys.
They're finishing gymnastics session, and they're lining up all the kids, and the parents come out there. And as the gymnastics coach is getting ready to break everybody, he walks up to the gymnastics coach and very proudly announces to the gymnastics coach and the group, he's like, I just wanted to tell you that my dad said that I am not allowed to say fuck. So we had to have a talk about, hey, you when I say you can't say it, that means you can't say that you can't say it. Like, you just can't say it at all. Like, you can't, you still broke the rules when you announced it to everybody. So, so there's that. Yeah, a couple things. So we're going to do the Ask Me Anything show. We have a list of questions. If you guys have questions, drop them in the chat. Pat is a wealth of knowledge. Flowmaster Forever, you guys already know the deal. We're wrapping up the level 1 and level 2 breakdown. Next week, Cody, we have the game show.
Next week. It's it's going to be, it started off as the level 1/level 2, and then in typical Ackerman fashion, he threw out all the structure that we had put in place and just said, we're going anything CrossFit, all of it.
Which is basically why he's not on the show anymore. So to answer Cody's question, why am I bigger than everybody? Because I need my ego stroked, and I requested that I be larger than everybody else on the screen. So that being said, anything else we need to cover, Cody, before we dive in on some of these questions?
What's coming up after the game show? So we're going to continue these coaching shows every Wednesday, and they're just going to be, coaching centric topics, nothing that's like following the level 1 or the level 2, just anything and everything inside of the coaching sphere for CrossFit. And we're going to have some really heavy hitters coming up. I think we've got episodes already scheduled all the way until the CrossFit games. So,
and Nick, we're having Nick on coming up Mondays, like every couple of weeks, to talk all things money with everybody. So tune in for that as well.
Yeah, Nick will be on, I think it's every 5 weeks, roughly, all the way until the Christmas holiday.
Cool. All right. The Whack Pack is not here yet. That's okay. They'll get their faces. They'll show their dirty faces eventually. All right, Cody, hit us with the questions. We'll toss the first one to Pat.
Sweet.
Sure.
All right, let's give Pat an easy one then, right? What do you do?
Let's not. Pat has more experience than all of us. Let's give him let's give him a fucking meatball. Like, you're not gonna throw this guy a fucking slow pitch.
Fine. All right, I'm going right out of the gate. The first one here, and this was actually sent to us as a video because it was a little bit longer. But basically, here's the stick. You're an owner. You're trying to get off the floor. You wanna have more time to work on your business. You're trying to pull back from coaching all the classes to maybe just coaching a few here and there, being the gym mayor, working on the business. You've already got your staff. They're completely maxed out. They can't coach any more classes. And you're in this predicament here. You've got one coach in particular that can only coach one class every week. Is it worth it to allow that coach to coach that one class, knowing that that's probably not enough time under tension to progress professionally as a coach, just so that you can earn back some of that time to work on your business? Or do you think I should still just be on the floor? I'll just take the hit for that, and I'll keep looking for somebody that can maybe dedicate more time, more workload to take that off of my plate?
Yes. Next question.
Succinct to the point.
I think Jay and I might have different perspectives on this, but I definitely have my thoughts on this. I think it totally is situation dependent, like most answers. The thing for me is I've always viewed certain gyms, or when I was running many gyms, I had two categories of coaches that I would look at. One was a Band-Aid and one was a lifetimer. And the Band-Aids never solved the problem. They just filled a hole while it was searching for something else. So in this scenario, that type of a coach to me would be a Band-Aid. Now, there's something that you look for in that type of a coach. And in my mind, what it would be is somebody who makes people have a really good time. If they're the type of coach who what they bring to the table is just like, it's a party, it's a dance party, or if it's like they just love their people and it's clear that they just like love the space and they're a great community entertainer, that's a fine person to have them never progress in their technical skills and to fill that Band-Aid class so that you can have that extra hour. So for me, the acceptance of they're never going to be great is there because they alleviate my stress of being able to fill that class, and they work as a fantastic Band-Aid, and it serves its purpose. In the long run, though, you can use that hour to find other coaches that would potentially fill that hole. So I wouldn't say it's like you just set it and forget it, but I think there's definitely a place in gyms for those types of coaches on your staff. And that's just but they have to be a specific type of person. Like I wouldn't put somebody who's like skill is researching information there, in my opinion. Like if their skill is research and you put them in the like fun, never going to develop the rest of the skills spot, that's for me where I draw the line.
I think I agree with you. I think there's a lot of variables here that I would need to know more on. Like 4 hours isn't a ton for you to do anything. Or if they're coaching one class a week, like I don't know how much production we're going to get out of that 4 hours, particularly depending on where it is in the day. You're always going to want those Band-Aids. Like even if the gym is like running on all cylinders, like you're still going to want those Band-Aids. They're just nice to have on the staff, honestly. Like if something comes up, you can plug them in. I like to always carry like 2 of those people. Like they're not like major rock stars, but they're still good teammates. They still know how to bring the heat, and they're useful when you need them. I think it's different if they were coaching like a little bit larger of a class load, but they were like the weakest link by large margins. That I think is a bigger problem. If that was the case.
Agree.
There. So,
agree.
But yeah, I think it depends. Like, what does the gym owner need to get done? You know, there's a lot of like questions I have more with that. So I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but I think we probably agree there, Pat.
And I mean, playing the other side, you often hear like you're going to be judged by your weakest link. And so do you feel like, man, like I may be doing a disservice to myself and maybe to my members by even having that person out there, knowing that they're going to be subpar compared to the rest of the team or what I'm looking for?
Pat, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it depends on who that person is. Like I've got a person in my mind that I think of when in this exact scenario, of an old coach of mine who was like the nicest dude ever, and just like people loved him as a person, but like you could tell his skills weren't as good as other people's. But because they cared about him and he added so much community wise to our gym, it was like I didn't think it looked poorly on us at all. I think most people when they come in there just love, getting something done. And if they're getting a lot of that high quality coaching in other places, if they're making them feel like they have a good, fun time, that's why I think it needs to be a specific person. I think it doesn't detract from the rest of your gym.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it depends. When we say the weakest link there, Cody, I'd be like, what are we talking about? Because if we're talking about their technical skill, most of your members have no idea what that is anyway. But they're like, man, I really have a good time when Cody coaches. I'm like, well, then shit. Like, let him go. Let him spread those wings and fly. Like, who cares at that point? Like, if he's bringing good vibes to the gym, there's large argument for like keeping that person around. And in some scenarios, that trumps like highly technically proficient.
Yep. Yeah, so, I like Candy's response there. So they're like knee sleep. They feel good and fix something, but they don't actually solve a problem. Yes, 100%. It's exactly that.
Well, so I've gotten caught here too, Pat, and I'm curious in your experience. Like, that's actually the real conversation, which is like, yo, I'm just going to leave this as is right now, but what's the long-term solution for this? Like, what am I going to start putting in place? What's my self 12 months from now want me to start doing right now? That's the question.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what you help people with the company of best hour of their day, isn't it?
You in fact walk people through that process and affiliate you. That is one of the many, many things that I answer 4,000 emails a day about. But yeah, but it can be hard as an affiliate owner to get your head out of the weeds, because in some of those instances, I could see how that it's like pain when you're training. Right. If I have elbow pain, like sometimes all I'm thinking about is my elbow, when my elbow is not actually the problem. That's the source of the pain, but it's not actually what's causing me a problem. It could be a tight pec muscle. It could be like messed up forearms or lack of range of motion at the wrist. So it's like figuring out what the actual source of the pain is, not the actual pain point. The coach is the pain point, but that's not the actual problem. And I think just having the wherewithal to think about that, be like, why is this happening? And it's not because Bob coaches 4 classes a month. That's not the actual issue.
No. Yeah, I've had it backfire on me though, which is why I clarify the type of person. Like I had a person in there who was like, had a background in exercise phys and was a chiropractor on the side, and then would come in and the classes just like technically they were sound. They ran at the same time, but like it was one of those ones where you're like, how do you not feel like how do you not like you're walking and you're like looking around and you're like, this feels awkward. Like
you don't know that everybody's not having a good time. Dude, and
yeah, it was wild. Like it's like
I don't know how you don't know that.
Well, yeah, and that was one of the things that illuminated my mind to understanding empathy and emotional intelligence and all this other stuff. And people always fall on that spectrum. So if you're going to choose a person to fill a single slot, err on the side of overly, sensitive
presence and attitude, baby.
P&A, if you have to, yeah.
What class do you think those people typically fall into? Is that typically the early morning or the super late evening class?
Which ones?
The people who are only going to be able to coach one class a week. I'm assuming they're probably falling in one of those spectrums.
Mine was actually a nooner.
Really?
Ooh. Yeah, it was a random time. He's like, I can do noon. And I'm like, oh, okay. Cool.
Like the least, it's like the least asked for, the least necessitated class that you have problems filling.
But it helps as a coach or a gym owner, because then you don't have to come into the gym at that time. You can leave that section of the gym. Like there's a few hours on either side usually, because there's not a 1-2 class. There's usually not a 10-11 class. So in my gyms that I've run,
I don't know where they usually fall. I've seen it in both places. I will tell you where I think it's most problematic. And I think it's most problematic if you have that person in the mornings, because nobody else gets to see it. So you could have a problem bubbling up and never have any awareness that problem is bubbling up for weeks, if not months, because it took 7 weeks for somebody to be like, we got to talk about, Ackerman's classes, like they suck, you know? And I'm like, well, that would have been nice to know 3 months ago. And I'm like, that's why. And they're like, that's why Jenny quit. And I'm like, shit. You're not going to see that person. So you're never going to like that scenario that Pat just outlined, where he walked in and he was just like, oh, I feel you would not experience that at 6 a.m. because you're not going to go there unless you're training at 6 a.m. So you would miss out on all of those kind of those red flags unless you're tracking attendance very, very closely, which you should. So
let's bring one up over here from the chat. Matt Burns, where do most of you find your full-time coaches? So he's asking the chat here, but what about you two?
There's two. So in the first iterations of my coaching and developing gyms, I would find them from within the community. That was just the easiest. I would just find people who excelled at the presence and attitude first and foremost, and then build them into coaches, people who were just fired up on it, and take them from part-time coaches into full-time coaches. It was always that process. But as I grew bigger and bigger, more popular gyms, I would get a lot of applicants. When we were done with ours, I was getting like 10 applications every 2 weeks, videos, people dropping in and being like, I want to coach here. But that was because we had created a space that people want to go to. So most of them, but even then, the best coaches we had were built organically from members. And just
why do you think that is? I have my thoughts, but why do you think that is the case?
The members? I think well, I mean, number one, if you're coaching at that gym, then you're already emulating what it means to you to be a good coach. So they already have a feel for the basics of what it means to be a coach within this space. So it's much easier to transition them because they've experienced it so many times. They've learned through osmosis. Whereas an external coach coming in has a preconceived set of ideas that they think is a good class or makes something feel a certain way. So unless they're truly great, then you're going to have to do a lot of molding them to your culture. So I think that was why it was much easier to come from within your space. Plus, you run gyms that are exciting, and you run classes, you get people fired up on this content, and they're like, I want to do this. So they if you make it seem really fun and engaging and worthwhile, like you should as a coach, then it breeds that I don't have anything to do right now. Can I come be here more? So I think that was another reason.
I don't disagree. I want to, but I can't. I want to. It says right here, Pat, you've not seen this award from the besties. It says here, I am the least likely to agree. Is my award.
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah. I have that trait too, Fern. I think it's one of our favorites. Is I'm gonna play devil's advocate purely to just try to play devil's advocate.
I'm reading a book called right now called Think Again, and he's diving into the different things that would create disagreeableness in people, and one of them is obviously the household that they come up to. Obviously, men are more likely to be disagreeable than women, but yeah, anytime that comes up, and I think back to my household, our household was just nonstop verbal jousting with everybody. It was just, I'm just going to argue with you just because. And that's just how the household ran. Everybody was talking shit to everybody all the time. Like getting an argument with my mom, and then my dad would chime in and my sister would chime in, and just a 4-way argument. And I was just like, everybody's having a good time.
Yeah. I mean, I far prefer that than just dead silence.
Yeah.
And I'll hold it inside.
Yeah.
I think what I had to learn how to do as I grew up with that mentality was I had to learn how to phrase an argument so I wouldn't offend the other person. Because
Correct.
in my family, I could be like, "You're fucking dumb," and I would treat them. And what I ended up realizing was the more I felt like somebody was close to me, the worse I would treat them in those situations. Because with family, I knew family would never leave, so I could treat them really harshly. So I found I would be overly harsh to a member of the gym that we had built this relationship with,
right?
They leave, and I'd be like, "Wait a second, what happened?" And then I'd be like, "That was my fault." So that was something I had to unlearn.
I've made that mistake with long time members. We get pretty close, and they say something like, "You're dumb,"
Yeah.
Like, because that's what I would tell like my best friends or my family. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I'm not exaggerating. Like, congratulations, you win the prize. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
You know?
And then, I can, there's 2 members that I did that to about a program. They were like, they went off and they started studying, like, as people do, like, I'm going to do Matt Fraser's program, blah, 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 blah. And I would always walk in and be like, why? You know, like, what do you think you're getting from this? Like, you're dead wrong. Like, literally you're trying to bring this in, like, you're dead wrong, you know, like, but I did it in such a forceful way that eventually they were like, I'm out. And then I'm like, I'm an idiot.
Why'd you leave? Pat hurt my feelings.
That was but I had taken this guy when we first did our on-ramp, guy couldn't get out of the bottom of an air squat. And by the time he left, he could jerk 315.
Dang.
Like, literally, he went from unable to stand up from the bottom of an air squat to jerking 315. And so I was like,
can you coach me? Because I am nowhere close to jerking 315. What? I feel inadequate right now in many ways.
Well, he was a good.
But you're bigger than all of us.
Yeah, you are.
That's right. Actually, yes. Thank you for reminding me, Cody. I almost forgot. The glass was half empty. Pull this up with this other one up from Brad, Cody.
Yeah. So from Brad Marshall, I'm reading the questions, Fern. You're answering the questions.
I forgot you're the producer.
Jeez, come on now. Brad Marshall, where does fun fall within the 6 areas of coaches for coaches to develop? And how do you help coaches bring more of it to classes?
I think it should fall higher than it does. I don't think enough people put fun. That's presence and attitude, right? So like the presence and attitude is kind of the fun factor, if you will. There's other things that obviously contribute to fun, which is like being organized, being on time. That makes things fun. But I think it should be higher because we're in the customer service business. It shouldn't be the end all be all. It shouldn't be the only thing that you're capable of. But I think it should definitely fall higher. And I've said this before, like there is strong argument for it being more important in many instances than one's technical knowledge. I think it was the video that one of the videos you're showing me last night, Pat, and then you were highlighting, they're like, yeah, the vast majority of coaching interactions are very, very surface level. You don't need a ton of technical knowledge to coach most people in most instances and in most scenarios. I'm like, yeah, that's where people are like, they're having a good time. And I'm like, that's all that really matters.
Yeah. Well, I had to learn that. I had to learn that was the case when I got brought up in this game, like the first coaches I had, I was at CrossFit Santa Cruz. So it was Greg and Tony and like Nicole and these guys who were they were all just like, get the work done, shut up. And I was like, okay, you know, and that was my idea of what a coach was. And then I moved from there to Hollis and Danielle Malloy. And they were like really into being technicians to the point where like it's at the expense of your good time. They're gonna critique you and they're gonna critique you hard. So my vision for what a coach needed to be was you needed to be really proficient at making people move better. And that was a high priority. And that still is to this day.
Right.
But then I met Jason Kalipa. And I remember walking into his gym and he was telling me about how many members he had. And he had like 450 members. And I was like, how do you have 450 members? Like that's at the time, like no one had a gym like that. Right. And I walked into his gym and it was barely a class. Like there was it was a filthy gym. And it was the music was so loud, you couldn't hear yourself think. It was a flippin' dance party. And he was just pumped and everyone was just jamming. You know, he would lose 50 members a month and he would gain 50 members a month because 50 people would get hurt because there was no coaching. But it showed me that people wanted that. And I was like, the beauty of what we could do of taking that exciting fun and merging that with some technical coaching, like that's what a coach is. Like, do you engage with them? Do they have a great time? Well, the best hour of their day, while simultaneously improving their physiology and overall quality of life. It's like that harmony is like, you can't separate them. Like you can't separate one or the other. You have to have both if you want to be considered a great coach. So his question is, where does fun place? I place it really high, but it can't be that or others. It's just
right.
Like different people find some people find thrashing themselves with hero workouts fun. And I'm like, oh, nope. I do not, sir, but I will help you have that fun, you know?
Yeah. I will write that workout for you, but I'm not going to participate. No, I agree. I think, and then that's where I consider the art is marrying those two things. It's like, can you be really, really good at your craft and people are have a good time? So they're learning things and they're not even aware of it. And they're just like, oh, I just go there because I have a good time. And then like 5 years later, they're like, oh, I didn't realize that like you were really good at this. And I'm like, yeah, that wasn't the point. The point wasn't for you to realize like how good I am at this. The point was for you to like get fit and have a good time and keep coming back for 5 years, right? That was the point. And then I'm glad that you recognize that I've been doing this for a while. But again, I used to think that was the goal, was for people to recognize how good you were.
Yeah.
Like, oh, nobody cares. This is a funny story. I had a member, this is probably 3 years ago. She's been with us for almost 10 years. So she's like 7 years into this. I gave her a scholarship spot to the level 1. She shows up to the level 1. She calls me on Friday. She's like, do I need to read this manual? I was like, Jesus Christ. I was like, well, yes, please don't embarrass me in front of my friends. She shows up and she's like, oh, this is a real thing. She's like, this is like a full-blown legitimate I thought you just went to gyms and talked to people about you liked CrossFit for the past 7 years.
Oh God.
And I like at this point, I've been on similar staff for like, the up like north of a decade. And she's just like, I had no idea what it is that you do here. And I was just like, I love you and hate you equally.
Love you. Yeah. Hey, he had a second part to that question of how do you help coaches bring more of it to classes? Yeah. I think that's making them aware of the people in front of them's interactions. So, and like I said earlier, people have higher or lower levels of emotional intelligence, so they can sense that easier. Like you don't need to have people like you, but you need to be like looking in people's eyes and seeing whether or not they're experiencing joy at some point. So I think that can be done so many different ways. But I think that the first step is just making people aware, Brad, of the fact that you're there to make them improve as human beings and have a good time. Like, and just making sure they're paying attention to the interactions that are happening, which you'd be surprised. A lot of young coaches don't even give a shit. They have like, they don't know that
no idea
bring the info and they don't even look to see how it plays out. So I'd say that's the first step.
Yeah. I've seen some stuff where I'm like, you have zero concept that Sally hates your guts. Like, and she's not being subtle about it.
Yeah.
And you're like, she's having a good time. I'm like, she's going to murder you. Like, that's how this is going to work. Like, you should pay attention.
Yeah.
Would you go as far as even to say that if we're going to lump like fun into presence and attitude, that this is job hiring criteria? Like, if you have to help coaches bring more of it to classes, is that something you need to reflect on as far as like, maybe I made the wrong hire?
For sure. I think when I'm looking at it, I've said this for a while, that like, it's much easier to teach people the technical skill than it is to teach them how to be good with people. Like there are people who just have blinders on for whether or not they sense that. And so like, I definitely think that I look for that in my criteria. But one thing I would beware of is don't fall into the trap of them needing to be like you, because like you can bring a level of connection, but not be a loud over the top idiot like I am. And that was a huge thing that I had to learn via a Finnish coach who was monotone, who by my definition wouldn't have been very fun, but he's easily one of the best coaches I've ever seen. Like he says such meaningful stuff that people care about him and care about they hang on his every word. He's not loud, he's not big, but he's really good. And he's like fun because he's like, his classes are super meaningful and anyone would go to his class and get so much from it. So yeah.
I dig it. Next one, Cody.
Yeah, let's grab. This is gonna be like I'm gonna combine
Joby?
a couple.
Who's it from?
No,
Yeah,
I'm gonna combine a couple from Instagram. I'll pull Jobian's up in just a second.
Because Gordon's on here too.
What do you think about box owners that don't work out / your owner does come to class, but they don't follow anything that you say as a coach? You're the coach of the class and the owner is just doing their own thing.
When I'm going to make an assumption here, and I don't know if this is correct, but when they say the owner doesn't work out, I'm assuming the assumption here is that they look like they don't work out, but I could be wrong. And then I'll combine that with the second piece. Here's what sometimes I think, and I'll defend some of the box owners for that second aspect. Like sometimes like box owners are busy. And if they're disruptive to the class, I think that's different. However, if the box owner is like jumping in late because that's their only opportunity to get it in, I think you should cut them some slack. As long as they're not disruptive, as long as they're not coming in and doing their own thing, then I think it's fine. Like twice a week, I'll hop into a class late, but I hop in exactly where everybody else.
So you're talking about you. Got it. Okay, cool.
That's what I said.
Good. Yeah.
That's what I said. I will defend box owners.
You said box owner, but you meant specifically you're going to give yourself some leeway here.
I'm larger, which makes me plural.
He also only works out twice a week. So
yeah. So 100% of the time I go into the class late is what I was saying. But I have seen it where people are completely disruptive to the class and like, I'm not doing that. And I'm like, no, that's just, you're setting a horrific precedent in that scenario. And I'm like, that's just dumb.
I saw a couple of those questions in there asked, like the box owner who's disruptive in class, or the one where it's like the owner doesn't work out. And I think both of those scenarios require a level of communication with that person to see if they really understand how they're impacting what's happening. I think that there's the way certain gyms are structured these days. There's certain times where there'll be an owner and an investor, and like, I think if you're showing your face in the gym, like if you're showing your face in the gym and you're there and you're representing the space, you have to work out there. And you should be working out there. And ideally you should be listening to your coaches, because if you don't, then why would anyone else? And I think sometimes we get our head up our own ass to where like we don't see how we're impacting that scenario. And it requires a brave coach to be like, hey, can we have coffee afterwards and let's talk? Because this is what happens every time you don't listen to me in class. It's like undermining my authority, and I don't know what to do because you're the owner here. And like it's that kind of a conversation that's outside the direct, like the time that it's happening, like not in front of the class, I think is just a really important one, like to build the capacity to have as an owner. Like coaches should be able to do that with you. And as coaches, you should have the confidence in your space to have this conversation. And if you don't, then there's in my mind, a leadership issue at that space.
Agreed. Yeah.
I love you.
I manage a Gold's Gym and work out in my garage. Is that a problem?
No, not at all.
No, that's fine. I think, but no, that's fine.
He manages a Gold's Gym, works out in his garage, and coaches at a CrossFit box.
Nice.
All right. Let's get into like maybe a couple of coaching questions here. How can coaches address longtime members who don't do full range of motion movements?
Ooh. Pat, I'll let you take
long time stubborn members.
Have you answered any of these, Jay, or has this been me the whole time? I just like you just
I'll
keep
go.
saying, Pat. No, it's good. No, I got this. This is fine.
No, it's fine.
I think it dovetails right on what I just said. Like you have to figure out why. Like I think there's also, I don't know, if you haven't built a culture to where that's like doesn't happen, most people don't hit range of motion because they're unaware of where they're at in space. And then you build a very, hey, why is this happening? You got to go deeper, and you hold them accountable. But I think there is the occasional person who has a huge ego, who they carry stuff for a long time. But if I think it depends on the scenario, because if it's something where it's a long-term member, you've had the conversation before, you've done these things, like, I don't know, it might be something we have to pull them aside. Same sort of deal. Like I just said on that last one. And hey, can we have coffee after class? I just need to know what's going on. Like, why is this happening? Do you know you're not hitting range of motion? Is there something I can do? Not like you suck, but is there something I can do to make it so you will hit range of motion? Or do you just not care about that? Like just having a deeper conversation if it's a long-term member who has as a continual issue. But If it's just some random, like it's in class and they're not doing it, like just tell them to go deeper or elbows up higher or whatever it is.
I can think of many scenarios when I've seen this or gone through this, and I think there's something fundamentally missed there. It could be a culture thing where we decide we're like, hey, we haven't been doing this. We need to do a little bit better. And you make that shift, and then people are resistant to it because people don't like change, because people are weird. And then the coaches try to exercise some degree of relentlessness and leave out the whole affirmation when the person actually does it, right? So like, hey, we're gonna have people squat deeper, and they're like they start hammering people, and it's only the hammering. There's never any like, yeah, nice job, Pat, like really good job, like trying to, like, I see your effort, dude, like thank you for doing that, I appreciate it. If you follow up with that, everything gets a little bit easier. But people typically leave that part out because they're so focused on, you know, Pat's a bad person because he squats high, which is true. But we have to think about, like, they want the affirmation. So if you give it to them, they're actually more likely to do the range of motion than not, right? Particularly if we're talking about this person with an ego. We'll stroke their ego when they do what you ask them to do.
Yeah.
Not just have a conflict with them. And then the other thing is just some of that, I think, is lack of coaching skill. Like the people are missing range of motion, and you either didn't see it and somebody else brought it up, or you didn't know what to do about it right there, real time. So everything is after the fact, and that creates a problem. We're like, well, they're not going to range of motion. I'm like, well, did you do anything about it? And they're like, I'm complaining to you. And I'm like, well, that's not really helping anybody. You know?
Yeah.
So
it's also movement dependent, right? Like
right.
Something like hundreds of air squats to something like Murph, where you're like, you know, or Cindy or something like that. I think in those scenarios, it's actually really helpful for certain people to get a target. Be like, hey,
right,
I'm going to give you a tangible target. Like here's a medicine ball, or here's 2 bumper plates and an ab mat. Like, get after it. Because then
that used to be the standard, by the way. You've been around long enough to know that. The old med ball for the air squat.
Yeah, bounce off that shit, yo. But the I'm a dwarf, so med ball was my jam. But
it's like box squatting for you.
Dude, super early in the game when I was doing med ball sit-ups and stuff, or like med ball as my target, very early on, Kelly Starr was like, sorry, dude, you're 2 bumper plates and an ab mat. And I was like, shit, which is low. Like, I can hit that, but it's low. Like, so that's been my target for years, and it's hard. So it does not feel good. But what I would say is sometimes cultures get built around sloppy standards. And that's as a coach, it's a really hard place to step into, because people don't think they're doing it wrong, and they are. And that has to be a constant conversation with, like, this is my fault. I let my eye adjust to your shitty movement. But you don't say it like that. You say, this is my fault, but we're going to hit standards because this is why. It's not for, you know, counting reps. It's not for competition. It's because this is how the human body is made to move. And being willing to hold people to those standards across the board is really important for our program. I mean, when I talk to coaches, I say the first thing we got to do, number one, is make sure they're safe. Like, are they moving safely? Period. Second is standards. Are they hitting the range of motion? If they're not hitting the range, like, second above technique, of like efficiency technique, above praise, above anything, it's literally, are they hitting the movement? And so as a coach, my first thing is, are they safe? If they're safe, I can move on to, are they doing the range of motion? Then and only then can I move to, like, turn your knuckles over faster, elbows through a little quicker, you know, adjust your stance a little. Like, as long as they're safe, they have to hit the standard. And if they don't hit the standard, I need to coach that next. But prioritizing your own internal hierarchy will help across the board.
Yeah, and I think sometimes just due to the social dynamics, you'll have to continue to, like, reestablish your line, meaning, like, you'll have to choose your battles there. If you walked into, Pat, or if you and I walked into a gym that has never had standards, I'm not going to fix that overnight. And if I was going to go in there and just try to reset the table in a week, I'm not entirely sure that would be great. Like, we'll get there, but sometimes I think you have to, like, take it on a little bit longer timeline and get people adjusted to it. Otherwise, you're just fighting with everybody, and it's going to be real hard for you to get traction on stuff like that. Because, again, they don't know. They think you're attacking them when I just want you to move better.
The funnier ones though are when you have your gym standard and your gym moves and is held to a very high standard, and you get the drop-ins and they stand out like a freaking sore thumb. They're my absolute favorite, because they think they're like lost in the crowd, because I would have these gyms with like 30 people per class. And you'd be like, you're not lost in the crowd. I can see you so vividly because of how poorly you move. Like, let's do this. Dude, and you try to do it like the lightest way, hold them to standards.
We had a member who was here for a long time, and him and his wife were both here. They're fantastic, but they moved, and he was universally known as the least flexible person. He had the flexibility of a steel rod. Like, to get below parallel was like 275 on the light end, be like, just cram him down below parallel. And they moved and they went to another blocks, and he got there, and they were like, I was there for like 2 weeks, and they asked me to coach. He's like, you move so well. And I was like, we were like giving him a hard time. I was like, are you working out with blind people? Like, what's going on? You know? I was like, oh, well, but he's coaching and he loves it, man.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. What else, Cody?
Let's see what we got here. A couple of those are kind of dovetailing off. Like, I have a know-it-all member who doesn't take instructions. Again, just goes back to having good conversations. Let's see.
You got to figure out why. Figure out the why behind why they're acting the way they are. And that can be a blunt conversation. It can be a tangential conversation. It can look deeper, because sometimes you don't know, and they've just had this like horrible time, like something going on in their life outside that. They're so we never know what people are experiencing. So always give people the benefit of the doubt for the most part, but you need to sort it out. You can't let them treat you poorly. But try to figure out why. And then if it comes to a deeper conversation, then go to have that deeper conversation.
All right, here's one. Be relentless in coaching, but how do you know when to let it go?
I think this is a little bit of an understanding of knowing what you are and you're not going to get in certain movements. It's like I can think of a couple of scenarios. Front rack position. So there's certain athletes that their elbow position will only get so high in a given training session. And me hammering them on get their elbows up, typically in the wrong tone, is only going to piss them off. So understanding what somebody's actually capable of actually allows you to like get and push them to that range, whatever that might be, or that threshold, or to that load, and maybe a little bit further, acknowledge it and then move on. But understanding that, like, if you have somebody who's legitimately super tight and like this is their starting position in the front rack, to think that you're going to get that on that day, that just makes you silly. So it's just like, just get them a little bit higher, and you don't have to let them get away with it, but you do have to recognize realistically, based on what we know about this person's anatomy, like, we're not going to get that perfect movement today. We might not get it in 6 months, but it's just like a little bit better, I think is really always the goal. So that's for me. It's just like knowing what they're actually capable of. And that means you're going to have to push the envelope a little bit to find out what that is. But once you find out what it is, I think you acknowledge that, and that kind of like sets the tone moving forward until you can reestablish a new threshold for them.
Yeah. I think we look to effort over outcome. So the time that we fail the person is that when that elbow person in specific is like, if we walk by and we don't see them trying hard to get their elbows up. So it's and you can see that in their face. You can see that in the, like, how much they're putting into it. Specifically with this question though, with regards to when you stop being relentless, like, we're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for, change. We're looking for some sort of like attempt to be in the right direction, something to be a little bit better, or even have the idea of a little bit better. But again, I go back to that charter that I had. Are they unsafe? We still have to stay there.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Are they hitting the range of motion? Like, well, if they're not doing the movement. Like, that's not really a conversation in my gyms. It's not like, well, it looks hard for you, don't go all the way down. Fuck off. Like Like you have to hit the range of motion. Like, so if we need to, like, I can hold your hand till you get down here, but you show me you do it once, you're going to have to do it every time. And then I think where you can have some leeway is in technical proficiency. Is it truly the most magnanimous movement? Like, you can move on from there. That being said, and when you get group classes, and this is the difficulty of group classes, there could be some big gross errors in something like an Olympic lift that while you're going through a generalized progression, you won't make that much change in those quick little verbal bits that you're giving them. But so you'll say, hey, we'll get back to you a little bit more once we jump into the full progression. We all break out and we start working on that build to the lift. So you mental note and then head back. That would be what I would say if it requires a little bit more effort. But just stay with them there.
All right, we've got like 4 questions over here in the chat, and Fern, I know you got a hard out, so let's hit some of these over here from the chat. This one was a good one from Matt. Since we're still talking about coaching, let's hit that one. How about male members that don't listen to female coaches? What do you do?
This is just a blunt conversation as far as I'm concerned. I've had to do this one time in my career and had to have like a straight up conversation. I basically just told, it was a young guy. I don't think he meant to do it. And I don't even think he was aware that he was going down the road he was going. And I just literally pulled him outside. I was like, don't ever do that again. Like, it's disrespectful for a whole host of reasons. Just don't ever do it again, or you can't be here. And yeah, I think sometimes you just have to have a hard conversation with people and just set the standard. Be like, hey, dude, that's not acceptable. Doesn't even matter why. It's not acceptable.
Yeah, building a culture where everyone else in the gym would be like horrified if that was the case is really good. Like that's the strength that we need to have, is like building a culture to where when that steps out, it's like, it's so weird where you're like, what the fuck? And then like that kind of goes.
They would be embarrassed. Like, everybody would be like, what are you doing?
Totally. And like, that's genuinely how it should be. But I think what's interesting is like these types of gyms where the coach is like buddy with everyone, and people are like talking while they're talking. And there's this, like, that breeds this, like, I mean, a coach already has positional authority, like that, they're given that, but we need to continue to support that as gym owners and other gym members. Like when we talked about, if you're an owner showing up and talking in the middle of class, you're undermining that authority. So building that rapport as a coach and as a facility is important. But I think, like you said, if it ever steps out like that and it's not happening, they need to be put in line. And I prefer, if possible, the female coach to do that and sit down afterwards and have a conversation and say, hey, like, why did you treat me like this? And what did I, like, is there something I can do? Like, why this is unacceptable? But if it's like further beyond that, like, I'm happy, just like you said, to step in and do it. My wife is like the gnarliest coach ever, which she was my favorite to give. Like, when someone would try to step out of line like that, she was such an asshole to people. And I loved it so much. And people love her as a coach. And like, I love that. So I'll throw them that way if anyone does it. It's almost like one of those, like, oh my God, did he say what to her? And then it's just turns around.
Yeah, you just call people over and like, Timmy's gonna die. Watch.
Yeah. But just building a culture where that's wholly unacceptable. I think not just in gyms, but like that's just unacceptable. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Right.
And Joby brings up, Joby brings up a good point. Like, I know that, Pat, you said you like to have the female coach do it afterwards, but what's the benefit to doing it after versus doing it right there in the moment?
I think if possible, and if it's something like truly egregious, it has to be addressed in the moment. Like, if it's like, whoa, but like, I think oftentimes when there's a group of people like staring at the scenario, we try in that moment, but it needs to be a bigger conversation at times. And that's why I think sometimes it has to happen after the fact, because then it feels more serious. And you can maybe be like, it could be one of those things too. It's like, what's going on in your life outside that you feel like this is acceptable? You know, like that, because it's not.
All right. Let's check out Gordon. Do you think there should be any standardization of opening an affiliate on the CrossFit side? I was at a box at Simi's, and the box environment and overall look was dirty and dingy.
Oh man, I've talked about this ad nauseum. And the short answer is no. I don't. And here's why. Gordon's what I like to describe as annoyingly good looking.
Dude, he pulls that suit shirt off.
Yeah.
Well. I mean,
and he's jacked too.
Yeah, I can tell.
I don't
Just
like
from
it,
his face.
but he's fantastic.
Actually, you guys haven't seen the new Fast and the Furious movie yet, I'm sure, but there's like a new
Jack Reacher
agent.
Yeah, he's Jack Reacher. Yeah.
He's
Alan,
Jack Reacher.
Alan Richardson, something or other. Yeah, my wife
I'm
has
gonna
a crush on him.
I'm gonna pull it up
who he
while
is.
you're
I've
answering
got
the
his
question.
number. By the way, he's definitely not that large because he eats a lot of protein. For the record, I think. No, I don't. Number one, I think it violates most of the things that allowed CrossFit to grow in the way it did and the way it continues to be. Also, if we were going to do that, I think we'd have to retroactively go back and look at every gym that is operating right now. And I know without any reservation that many of them would be put on the chopping block. I don't think we should start like crushing them. I think we should collectively raise the standards so they're forced to keep up, or the market deals with it in that scenario. But I don't think arbitrarily withholding access to the market is a great idea in a lot of instances. I think there's scenarios where that is useful and can be a good plan, not when it comes to fitness. It's just like, again, even when done poorly in a dingy spot, like Pat was just talking about, like Kalipa's gym early on the day, like, we were going to not let him. We're not going to let him open a gym. I'm like,
no, you wouldn't have. You absolutely would not have, based off of the standards that we now hold, which is ironic because of where his gyms have come to now. But like based off of like the gyms we now hold, there's no way we would have let those people open up gyms. So I don't think we should. But what I do think we should do is we should have a way for the community to self-regulate. And my idea for years has been like, what if we have an Airbnb for drop-ins at affiliates? So it's basically, it's on a big map. You have an Airbnb and there's that same rating system where you can rate the gym that you went to, and they don't get to see your rating until they rate you as a drop-in. How did this person treat the affiliate? How did the blah, 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 like, and so we all have like these big gym profiles, and you get this back and forth. So it's a self-regulating community. You're promoted to vet these communities and say, hey, this was really dirty bathroom, blah, blah, blah. It's set in a public forum. You can also handle this big payment platform. So you can pay for your drop-ins online. You can sign your waiver online for every gym if you're in this platform. Like, the whole thing exists in this economy, but then we rate each other and we self-regulate our own community. And then you can even put coaches have their own profile. So you can rate the coach experience that you had. And you can do this kind of like back and forth at a gym where these coaches are rated really highly by all the drop-ins that attend there. I think it would make it a much more transparent experience of like, this is a good CrossFit gym, this is not as good a CrossFit gym.
I just started coding that. We're going to start that business tomorrow.
Exactly.
Best hour BNB. Best hour.
Yeah. Best hour BNB.
Dude, we don't have any bandwidth to start a new business.
We are actually we're giving you that project, Cody. So your vacation. If you guys want a little secret, Cody gets stressed out sometimes, and then Jay just piles on and makes it worse. So.
Yeah. All right, we got like 5 minutes left, and let's hit this one here. Me so easy. How do you handle members who don't push themselves and like to stay in their comfort zone? You see that month after month, and they don't improve or grow.
I think this goes back to basically the same way Pat has answered almost every question, is have a conversation with that person. Be like, hey, like, how are you feeling today? Like, do you think you could go fast here? Are you okay with going a little bit heavier, or strike some sort of compromise where you're like, hey, I know you don't want to go, super heavy here, but if you're going to do that, then what I'd like to do is I'd like to push the pace on the run or the row or something else like that. And you kind of like choose your battles in there. Cause I think that sometimes we assume people are psychologically prepared to deal with intensity when that is not the case in a lot of instances. And that can't be overlooked and that's a hard one too, right? Because like you can't see somebody's psychological tolerance. It's very obvious if their physical tolerances are being exceeded. They just turn into a sloppy taco. But psychologically, that's a little bit harder to pick up on sometimes. Sometimes it's pretty easy to see, but a lot of times you're just like, you don't know why they're scared or why they don't want to go hard or what their fears are. So I think just talk to them like, hey, let's talk about this. Like, how are you going to approach this today? Don't even give them any advice. Like, how are you going to approach this today? They're like, I'm going to do this. I'm like, let's go a little bit faster. Let's go faster here. Anytime I've ever done that, it's worked out just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that it depends on why they're not pushing. Remember, we push people relative to their own physical and psychological tolerances. That's foundational from the level 1. And some people are bringing different things. And I would say that you can be anywhere from sneakily adding extra load to their bar when they're not looking.
Not dangerous at all.
To figuring out to immediate. No, I meant more like they go to the bathroom right before the workout and they come back and all of a sudden it's 65 pounds instead of 45 pounds. And they're like, wait a second.
315.
Yeah.
That's his trick. That's how he got that guy to jerk 315. He just kept
and
thought it was 135. You're like, fuck, it turned out better than I thought.
Also understanding, like, if they're just stoked on life and they still love your facility and they're doing all their stuff, if they're not like, hey, why am I not improving? Like, the number one thing is that they're coming in. And and you can keep dropping those little conversations like, hey, you okay with the rate that you're improving or something like, and if not, then you go, okay, here's where we're pushing, like, and then you have that through there. But yeah, lots of technique.
Subtly be like, hey, are you okay with being mediocre?
Yeah. I mean, do you find being kind of like shitty all the time?
I mean, did you wake up this morning? You're like, I'm going to be average. Cause if so, you're crushing it right now. So,
all right, dudes.
Cool.
Fern, I know you got to get out of here.
If you guys want to keep going, keep going. But I thought there was another one in here.
I think we're out of questions. Joby wanted some Pat stories, but he's already left the chat. He wanted some old school Pat.
Pat's
stories.
got a lot of stories.
Dude, I still think we should do a series called Level 1 Stories, where we talk about some of the stuff that happens at level.
Dude,
1.
I think
like the time Pat would kick the door open and said, "You, me, outside now." When Lisa Ray got disrespected by the guy, do you remember that one?
Bro, I've heard that story, which is hilarious knowing Pat, because he's like one of the more docile human beings you'll ever meet until something goes a little sideways, and then you're just.
I have like 4 Pat Sherwood stories that are like, what? Like the jump kick to the chest of the guy on the 400-meter run. Do you remember that one? Oh my God. Like full domestic abuse thing. And he just runs off on the 400, jump kick to the chest, lays the guy out mid-workout, comes back in, keeps doing the workout. How amazing is that? It was like, oh my gosh. Teffy!
What's up, Teffy?
Crazy stuff. What's up, Teffy? All right, I got to go. I'm going to miss my plane flight. I love you guys. If you guys want to keep going, please do. Outside of that, like, subscribe.
Yeah. We'll wrap it up.
Welcome to the team. I love you.
Love you too,
I'm
man.
out.
Good to be here.
Cody, you can make yourself big.
I'll make myself big. I got it. Pat.
Yeah, man.
Well, for everybody that joined a little bit late, Fern made the announcement earlier. You'll see it up on the Best Hour, but Pat has officially joined the Best Hour team. He's going to be doing lots of cool stuff with us, and you'll probably get to hear some of those stories that he was talking about earlier. Before we wrap this thing up, I do want to give a shout out. Well, 2 things. One, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, O2. The offer that they have for us, banner scrolling down there at the bottom. You buy 3 24 packs, you get 2 free. Mini fridge, Yeti Rambler. The link's already in the chat. It's pinned up at the top. That is for affiliate owners. So if you click on that, you can go there and get the deal, read the whole page. There's a lot of really cool stuff on there for affiliate owners. So go check out O2. And the game show. The game show's next week. Pat, maybe you'll be in the chat hanging out, having some fun with the crew that's there. But we will be doing basically anything and everything CrossFit. We're going to do a Jeopardy style. We are going to have 2 teams of 3. We've chosen our captains. The captains have chosen their team. Young Katie is going to be on one of those teams. So that's going to be a lot of fun because she's making a return to the show for a little bit. We're going to have some fun, though, before we kick off kind of like the next series of Wednesday shows with all the coaches sledgehammers that we've got coming down the pipe. But Pat, man, I appreciate you being on the show here today, and glad to have you on the team. I know everybody's going to be, well, you see all the excitement over there. Look, young Katie's in the chat.
Hey.
Everybody's excited to have you on the team, man, and can't wait to have more of you on the show.
Yeah, man, stoked to be here. It's gonna be fun.
Guys, hit the like, subscribe, share it with all your friends, and we'll see you guys later.